The Patterson Foundation
strengthens people, organizations, and communities by focusing on issues that address mutual aspirations,
foster wide participation, and encourage learning and sharing.
Welcome to Beyond the Blog, the podcast of the Patterson Foundation. TPF is also the nickname of the Patterson Foundation, and we will probably use that more often than not. Hi, I'm Debra Jacobs. I'm the president and CEO of the Patterson Foundation, TPF, and I am the host today, and I'm excited about we're going to explore Advancing Philanthropic Leadership with Andrew Spector, who is TPF's 9th fellow, but also responsible for our strategy refresh. So now for the listeners, they've heard a whole bunch of terms that they have no idea what that means about the Patterson Foundation. So I'm going to take a step back just for a moment and remind our listeners that TPF works on initiatives, and rather than making grants, we work on initiatives that we create. One of our initiatives that builds on every other thing we do is Advancing Philanthropic Leadership, because we have learned that there are people out in the world who are determined to change the world to make it better, and we would like those people to come and work with us for a few years and then head out and make the world a better place. So that falls under our umbrella of Advancing Philanthropic Leadership, which is actually a partnership that we have with the Lilly Family School of Philanthropy. And we're now in, I believe, our 8th year, maybe 6, 7, 8, around that time period. With that, and in true TPF fashion, where we connect, learn, share, evolve, and strengthen, this initiative has definitely evolved. The reason we're doing this particular podcast with Andrew is because, number one, he's our 9th fellow, so we've had a lot of experience, but also Andrew, as I said, handled our strategy refresh. And we would like listeners to understand what the initiative is, but also what it's like to be a fellow. So we've got 2 parts, understanding TPF and the initiative. So to get going, it all starts with the person. Andrew, why did the opportunity with the Patterson Foundation even become something you thought you would want to do? So a bit of your wandering path in being a possibilitarian.
Well, first of all, I'm really excited for this conversation with you this morning, Debra, so thank you. My story really begins, I'll start it when I graduated college. I moved out to Tulsa, Oklahoma to do Teach for America. I had been a camp counselor and I loved working with kids, and I wanted to make a difference in the public education system. And when I moved out to Tulsa, I became struck by these 2 experiences of, one, feeling like I, as an outsider and newcomer to the community, I was really invested in. And then I met my students, my 6th graders, who are these brilliant young people that were so capable of making a difference in the world, and they weren't being invested in the same way that I was as an outsider and newcomer. And so as insiders, I felt like, oh, they really are much better positioned to make a difference than I am. And so I started an organization with my co-founder, Jake Lerner, who was also a Teach for America core member and had the same experience, called Tulsa Changemakers, and it evolved into being a kindergarten through 12th grade youth leadership organization that supported young people in Tulsa in making a difference in their communities.
All right, I'm going to interrupt just for a moment because you as a person have just given us a rich look into a possibilitarian. Tulsa was not your hometown. You went into a profession that actually wasn't your educational degree, and you arrived there and you entrepreneurially started a new organization. I want to hear a little bit more about Andrew. You weren't scared. You weren't scared. You went out and you were brave. So just talk a little bit about that. That's not in everyone's DNA.
Yeah, I don't know exactly where that comes from. I think in part it comes from my upbringing. My parents are very analytical, and we're always analyzing the things that we're surrounded by. I sort of felt, I think I was grown to see that I was capable of, if I saw something that needed to be changed, that I could play a role in making a difference. And when I was in college, my first experience with that was I was awarded a Jewish Studies Fellowship by two philanthropists named Marty and Julie Clapper. And that fellowship was really just to study Jewish values broadly conceived. And it was a multi-month experience, but the key to their investment was they wanted the fellow to come back to the college campus and to bring back what they learned in some way. And so I started my college's first interfaith program called Religious Life Exchange. And that built a lot of confidence in me, knowing that, I could see a real opportunity to strengthen, to do something. In this case, it was seeing an opportunity to bridge understanding and create possibilities between people of different faiths on campus, including the atheist humanist community as well. And that experience, along with mentorship I received from Marty and Julie Clapper following the completion of the fellowship, where they exposed me to really important concepts like asset-based community development and toxic charity and the importance of listening and measurement, that when I showed up in Tulsa, I was sort of looking at it through this lens of asset-based community development, of who's the asset here? Is it me, this person who's not from this community and doesn't know this community in the way that my students do, or these incredible young leaders that are actually from here and know this community in a way that I never could? And it was like, well, what could I do to invest more deeply in the existing assets here? And then also equip them to have an asset-based mindset, so they aren't saying, hey, I'm the only expert. I'm going to actually do some listening, not just of myself, but of others.
So where did this whole idea of getting your master's come into? Because you were pretty busy in Tulsa.
Yeah, very busy in Tulsa. Taught for 2 years, brought the organization temporarily under the fiscal sponsorship of Leadership Tulsa, the adult leadership organization, and then co-directed the organization with Jake Lerner for about 7 years and kind of evolving roles. And one of my roles was leading the fundraising, building out the fundraising program and working with institutional and individual donors, really the whole fundraising program. And I got really interested in the power of philanthropy. And I learned a lot through my relationships with funders. I noticed that as the founder of a small nonprofit, I had lots of gaps in my thinking. And as I sort of cultivated more and more candid relationships with my funders, I realized that I was missing a number of pieces of understanding the philanthropic sector. And it actually traces back to Marty and Julie Clapper. Their friend Mickey Levitan was a visiting professor and still is at the Lilly Family School of Philanthropy, and I discovered them as a possibility. And I knew I wanted to learn more specifically about the philanthropic sector. I knew I needed to broaden and deepen my knowledge. And I wanted to specifically study the relationships between nonprofits and funders, because I felt like there was some real there in terms of strengthening the impact across the sector. And so through multiple conversations over multiple years, eventually decided that I wanted to apply to the Lilly Family School of Philanthropy for the Master's in Philanthropic Studies, and then started that in, I think, January of 2021.
You know, Andrew, I've now worked with you more than 2 years, and the stories that you're just telling are affirming how you totally get the importance of relationship building, all right, because the people that you talked about early, you continue to have relationships with to learn and share. And it's this creating this web network of learners and sharers that want to propel the greater good. So it's kind of cool to watch it. It has always been part of you, but you elevate it each step along the way. All right, so here you are. You're getting your master's at the Lilly Family School. You're started an organization. You're helping that organization have its legs so it can be on its own. And you are like, what am I going to do next? So help me and help our listeners understand why TPF's fellowship.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, for Tulsa Changemakers, to sort of give some background on why it was sort of the right time, from the beginning, Jake and I wanted to combat founder syndrome and set the organization up to thrive without us. And so we made some strategic decisions along the way to set it up so that it could do that. And at some point before or during my master's program, we knew that we had sort of completed the first stage of the organization, which for us was about experimentation and figuring out who we are. And we knew that we needed to move into stage 2, which was really about high quality execution. And the program was high quality, but we felt like it could be taken to a totally different level, particularly if we brought in people that were just better educators than us. just the reality for Jake and I is that we were solid teachers, educators, facilitators. There are way better people out there than us that are doing it. And so we knew to move into the second stage of high quality execution, we had to bring on other people and to slow down the growth and experimentation along with that. And so we designed and implemented a succession plan that included onboarding our main successor, Hannah Jarman, who continues to lead the organization fabulously. And during the master's program, I was learning a lot more about the sector, connecting with different folks around the country, and I built a relationship with Dr. Kathy Badacher, who was my professor for multiple classes. I think it was the history of philanthropy, an internship I did, and for 2 independent research studies that I did. And when I was telling her, here's what I'm interested in, and here's sort of the phase I'm at, I'm figuring out what I'm going to do after I roll off of Tulsa Changemakers in the summer of 2023, she said, you should really look into the Patterson Foundation Fellowship. And the reasons why were a fewfold. One is that she knew that I was really interested in foundations and being on the philanthropy giving side. And she knew that the Patterson Foundation did things in a way that are innovative, rooted in trust and authentic engagement with the community. And those are values that she learned were important to me. And the Patterson Foundation is so multifaceted in the number of initiatives that it works on. It could be a chance for me to to sort of build really deeply on the experience that I'd had working and leading a small education leadership focused nonprofit and zoom out much bigger and look at a lot of different program areas all at once. And to receive mentorship from you, Debra, as well as other really fantastic consultants that have storied careers in many different sectors.
So I don't believe we have mastered the cloning yet. So you're in Tulsa and you're getting a master's from a school based in Indianapolis. How did that work?
It was online, part-time.
Oh, okay, all right.
So I had busy days, but I actually did not go to Indiana for the first time until I went there with you, Debra, this past summer, July 2025.
So how long did it take you to get your master's?
It took me, I think, 2 years. So I started January of 21 and finished December of 2022.
Okay, all right. So I'm going to move forward now. So you have, Kathy said, you should look. I know, Andrew, you had other opportunities. We're not going to go into those today, but I am thrilled you did not take the other opportunities and you chose to come to the Patterson Foundation. So let's talk about when you first came here, you had perceptions of what being a fellow would be like. And then you immersed and you were like, okay. And you have evolved, blossomed into just being an absolutely stellar fellow. So what was the original, don't know if this was a good one, and it became a good one? What was your give insight into that?
Yeah, I think I had this perception. I think there's 2 sort of misperceptions that I had. One was understanding who TPF is and what TPF does and how TPF works. I didn't totally get that until I started working here, and it actually may have taken me a year to really get it, and I'm still always learning. So that's one sort of misperception of TPF, which I can get into. And then 2 was sort of a misperception of exactly what a fellow's role is and how it evolves over time, and sort of the difference between a fellow in their first year or in their second year. I'll start with the experience of the fellow. I thought day one I'd come in and the fellowship would be completely customized to everything that I wanted to do and learn and be. Oops. And I actually created a document, which I don't think I shared with you, Debra, of like all the things that I wanted to do, but I was ready to tell you what I wanted to do. And at least I was wise enough not to like send that to you right away. But I definitely, I think it definitely came across, and I was a little frustrated when I first started here because I felt like, I came here because everything was going to be for me. And I learned over time that was not the case, and for good reason. Because the fellowship really is designed for 2 key reasons. One is to learn, it's 3, learn, contribute, and launch. And to really contribute meaningfully to TPF, it required a lot more learning and listening to understand what TPF is about first and what's been going on here and all the ways that TPF has already shown up in the community. And while the fellowship absolutely can be tailored to support the career and impact goals that I have, it was still really important that wasn't just about me. It was about what's right for the organization and for the community and the way that we were trying to show up to make the difference that we care about. And then when it comes to sort of not understanding TPF, I sort of had this perception that, well, TPF must be granting money in some way. And I was like, I'll just figure it out when I get there. I'll find out what the grant making is. And I learned that TPF shows up to make an impact in other ways. And I think one of the biggest reflections that I'll be leaving TPF with is that a really powerful way to practice philanthropy is to not start with the money, but to start with the aspiration. What are you actually trying to accomplish? And then we'll figure out what resources are necessary, what people are important to be involved with, what actually needs to happen to get towards that aspiration. But instead of starting with the money and saying, well, we'll grant our way towards success, we start with, what's the aspiration, who else cares about it, and what's possible.
Well, and I want to take that from the beginning, we know you're going to leave. Okay, fellows don't stay. Fellows come to learn, immerse, grow, but then launch. So wherever anybody goes, grant making probably is the norm that's out there. And so how did TPF, even though we weren't a traditional grant making organization, how did you get to hone those muscles a bit? What happened through the loaning out of Andrew? Yeah,
so the experience of a fellow is not just about what you do at TPF, but there's also ways that because TPF is so connected to many different stakeholders within the 4-county area that we work in, and also nationally because of the proven practices that we download from national organizations and bring and adapt locally, but then also share out what we learn here. I had the opportunities to be loaned out to the William G. and Marie Selby Foundation, the Bishop Parker Foundation, and also the Community Foundation of Sarasota County, and work really deeply in partnership with the leadership of all three of those organizations in ways that were connected to grant making and strategy around grant making. So while at TPF, the focus is not on grant making, I was able to build those muscles in partnership with leadership of those foundations.
And one of the aspects each fellow is distinctly different because of your considerable amount of fundraising experience that you had. We didn't loan you out to fundraising efforts here because you already had those muscles. So we spent the time. So it is customized a little bit to make sure you get the full flavor of working in the foundation world, but you didn't need the fundraising because you brought that with us. But deepening the grant making gave you you got 3 very distinctly different approaches to grant making that strengthened your perception of it.
Yeah, and really, really helpful to see things from different perspectives. I feel very fortunate now in, I guess, my 3rd year, give or take, at the foundation, that I haven't just been at one foundation, that I've seen multiple different ways of approaching how to make an impact, and then participating in grant making processes in different ways. At the Bishop Parker Foundation, I had the opportunity to be loaned out to support Wendy Deming, their first full-time CEO, to support her with some strategy around grant making, her and the board. And she had just been at the foundation for 3 months. A really amazing experience to be able to play that kind of role and to learn from a terrific board and a terrific CEO that are doing amazing work. It was pretty surprising that Wendy had only been there for 3 months, given the impact that she was already making. With the Selby Foundation, I had the chance to support with some emergency grant making around Hurricane Milton, and also help design their technology grant making strategy. The list goes on, but having such a diverse array of experiences was really powerful and a really great addition to what I was already learning and doing at TPF.
I think there was one other aspect for any fellow who comes is the whole strategic communications. And I can remember when I shared the good news that you were going to become a podcast producer, and you did not think that would necessarily be the best use of your time. And this is for all listeners to know. When one is open to the possibilities, not only did you embrace it, but you turned out to be the podcaster who has the highest viewership. So something about embracing those opportunities, even though when you didn't think it was great. Do share, because as a podcast producer, you really got to think about what is my goal, what do I want to do. I love your both sides of the check. So just, where did it come from? Why did you do that? And was that an important theme?
Yeah, well, I'll touch on first, and I'll just say that that's part of the value of the fellowship is to work with you, Debra, and you have so much experience in the sector and developing people in the sector that you get to look at us and say, oh, here are ways that this person might be able to improve. And that kind of coaching and mentorship is a huge value because you don't always know what you don't know. And so strategic communications was an area of that for me. And so from both sides of the check, that was a podcast series that I did specifically interviewing those who have been on both sides of the check, who are now in foundation leadership roles, but have been on the nonprofit side. And that really came from a few things. One was research that I did during the master's program at the Lilly School, where I was researching the relationships between nonprofits and funders. And I was really intrigued by this notion, and the blogger and author Vule, who writes Nonprofit AF, the blog, he talks about the importance of hiring empathy. And what he means by that is that when you're on the foundation side, you hire those who have lived experience either in the community or on the nonprofit side, especially with fundraising, because they often can get it in ways that you may not otherwise if you haven't been on the other side of the check. And so I was really curious to talk with foundation leaders who had been on the nonprofit side and for them to reflect on what's it like on one side versus the other? How was it adjusting from one side to the other? What are things that you've taken from your experience on the nonprofit side to inform how you do your foundation work? And I thought it was really informative about both the status quo in the sector, but also the value of having diverse experiences.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And again, kudos to you on how you took the concept of podcasting, and really it's woven into many of TPF's initiatives. I want to give a glimpse into listeners and potential fellow applicants about type of work. So we're not going to go through all of them, but I think the opportunities that you had to do evaluation. In truth be known, TPF does not spend a lot of research on evaluation because we're in continuous mode of evolving and strengthening, but it is wise for us to periodically stop, evaluate what's working so that we can really be sure we know where we're going forward. So pick anything that you took on that was one of your babies that you had to strategy refresh, evaluate, help TPF be stronger.
Yeah, that's been one of my favorite parts about the fellowship has been the opportunity to do that multiple times. Mm-hmm. One I'll identify is the Advancing Philanthropic Leadership Strategy Refresh. It's a very unique opportunity to be able to work on refreshing an initiative that houses the program that you're currently participating in. Mm-hmm. And I think it's kudos to TPF for sort of giving somebody that experience when they're going through the program. I got to work with the initiative lead, Dr. Don Bowman, to conduct the strategy refresh. And we conducted an extensive amount of listening, particularly internally, around what has been working with the initiative overall and what are directions that it can go in, and putting together a real roadmap for how the whole initiative can continue to improve moving forward. And so I really enjoyed it. I think that we've already made some recommendations that have made material improvements to the fellowship experience, to the nonprofit internships experience, and to other elements of the Advancing Philanthropic Leadership Initiative.
I believe during the strategy refresh, you were able to bring all of your experiences, not only as a fellow, but as a leader of organizations and working with Lilly, to truly help future fellows find their way and knowing that this is the place that they want to be. We also learned a lot of strengthening our relationship with the Lilly Family School of Philanthropy, because so often everyone's doing their own thing. We don't have enough cross-pollination. So kudos to you on doing that. And actually, you are the Patterson Foundation's first senior fellow. So that was not the intent as you went through, but it ended up being the logical thing for us to do. I want to shift a little bit here into the future. You're now in your launch phase, okay? And you may be launching into a place you've always known you want to go, but maybe along the fellowship, new possibilities opened up for you in your thinking. So could you just do a little bit of how your brain morphed in your launch process, and what are you thinking about for the future?
Yeah, so I had what I thought were clear ideas of what I wanted to do after the fellowship right when I got here, and there were two things I was interested in. One is that I had started an initiative at the end of my time in Tulsa with a new Jake Wild Korea, who he's currently on faculty at the University of San Diego. He's a professor of practice teaching peace and conflict resolution. And right at the end of my time in Tulsa, as a result of research I was doing in my master's at the Lilly School and research he was doing in his master's at the University of San Diego, his research was on applying peace-building methodology to the philanthropic sector. Mine was about relationships, as I mentioned before, relationships between nonprofits and funders. And we had sort of this question as we got connected of, would it be possible to construct a space where nonprofits and funders come together and we, through intentional facilitation, mitigate those inherent power dynamics between nonprofits and funders such that real conversation and co-creation can happen so that they can either strengthen the sector together or strengthen how they're working together to make a greater impact. And when I first started at the fellowship, I was pretty confident that I was either going to continue moving forward with that as my full-time work or finding a position at another foundation. And I'm continuing to work on that initiative. It's called Philanthropic Action Lab. And we've made some solid progress over the last couple of years. And what I've learned at the fellowship and connections that I've been able to make through the fellowship, particularly at conferences around the country, which have been part of the fellowship experience, have really bolstered the quality of the work that we're capable of doing with Philanthropic Action Lab. But I'm not as focused on working at a foundation after the fellowship. While I'm open to working at a foundation, I think for me, it goes back to what I said before, which is that it's about my pursuit is about making a difference. And it's about leading with the aspiration, not with the money. And so whether it's working at a foundation, consultancy, nonprofit, PSO, or NSO, I'm actually open. For me, it's about launching to an organization that's making impact I care about. I feel like I thrive most in roles where I get to build, to be strategic, to be entrepreneurial, to work with people. And so if there's a culture fit at an organization that's driving impact I really care about, and I get to be in a role that feels like that, then I'm all in and I'm excited about it.
Well, and you just brought up something that we believe is so very important. It's not the job or the position, it's the culture fit. Okay, where can someone use their gifts in a way that they can really make a difference? Andrew, for people who are thinking, maybe I should or could be a fellow with the Patterson Foundation, do all fellows look and act the same and go the same place?
Absolutely not. Okay. 9 different fellows, 9 different stories. I think there are specific attributes that a fellow that should have. But there's not one size fits all by any means. I've interviewed all 9 fellows as part of the Advancing Philanthropic Leadership Strategy Refresh. And if you're going to identify sort of similarities among them, one would be that there's a sort of a culture fit piece in that to be a fellow, you really want to be what we call here a passionary and a possibilitarian. Passionary meaning that you are genuinely committed to making a difference and you know that you're going to change the world or a small part of the world. Mm-hmm. And a possibilitarian is somebody who loves the idea of creating new possibilities and embracing new realities and taking on new opportunities. Because related to that, at the fellowship, we work hard. It's not like a cushy foundation position. Mm-hmm. It's you're going to work really hard on a lot of different components so that you can make a real impact and strengthen yourself to launch into the things into what you care about launching into. And so you have to be a passionary, a possibilitarian. You have to have a really terrific work ethic to be really connected to that, really organized, and you have to be at point in your career where you want to use the fellowship for what it's capable of. In the fellowship, you receive really unique mentorship from you, Debra, and from other from consultants and staff members of the organization. You have the chance to dabble in lots of different initiatives and program areas while also taking advantage of different fellow alone opportunities and going to conferences around the country. And so oftentimes it's really helpful for somebody who wants to, like myself, who's sort of making a career pivot, because I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do after starting and leading Tulsa Changemakers. And there are other fellows that can point to, they were on a certain career pathway, and this was a great opportunity for them to pivot into something new. And it's also been valuable for some fellows that are earlier on in their careers, and it was a really great launch point for them as well. So it's taking an earnest look at where are you in your career, and where can you go, and how is the fellowship uniquely tailored to making that possible.
Well, Andrew, you have been an outstanding fellow, and one of the things about being a TPF fellow, once a fellow, always a fellow, so we have our TPF Beyond, where all the launch fellows actually come together once a year, but also you have your periodic check-ins with each other, because again, you're all in different places, but there's something each one of you has in common, and that's the experience as a TPF fellow. So thank you for who you are. Thank you for how you have invested yourself in the Patterson Foundation and the sector as a whole. So thank you for joining me. Listeners, if you would like to learn more about the Patterson Foundation, please visit our website, www.thepattersonfoundation.org. And we're thrilled that you are listening to Beyond the Blog.